Okay, we'll start the City of Olivet's Planning Community Development Commission or Community Planning and Community Design Commission in order. Since Jody's not here, would you mind reading the roll call?
Not at all.
That'd be great. Thanks, Carol.
Member Sam Wallet,
Present.
member Daniel Rosenberg,
Present.
member Tim Spiegelglass,
Present.
member Brian Lewis,
Present.
member Jody Rich, she's absent. And member Rob Durgill,
Present.
or Chairman Rob Durgill, I should say,
Present.
and Vice Chairman Carol Wagoner, that's me, and I'm here.
All right. Let it also be known that City Council Liaison Missy Waldman is in attendance, as well as our staff liaisons, Carlos Trejo, the Olivet's Planning Community Development Department's Director, Dawn Doty, Senior Planner, and do we have your car?
No, your car had submitted her resignation
Oh, no.
here, so she won't be with us, unfortunately.
Oh,
That's Seargo.
well, that's sorry to see her go, and good luck for finding somebody new. So we'll move on. Carlos, am I missing anybody on there?
Nope, that covers everyone, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, thanks for everybody in attendance. Sorry we got started a little bit late. Carlos, I think we do have people on Zoom as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. So just to give everybody kind of a rundown of how we do things, for those who haven't been in attendance before, we go down the agenda items and we have a time at the very beginning for public comments. These are for public comments that are not for items on the agenda. So if there's something that you have a public comment that's related to an agenda item, we'll give time for that when we're at that agenda item. And how we do that is when we go through the agenda items, there'll be a staff report to kind of go over the petition that's in front of us. Any new updates that have occurred. There'll typically be some discussions back and forth with commission members and staff. Then we typically bring on the petitioner, further discuss it, have some questions back and forth. And then after that, then we typically, have time for public comments. We do ask you, for anybody who does have public comments, either the general public comments or for the agenda items, that you come to the podium up front. Make sure that the speaker is on. There's a little light that you hit for the press talk. And we do ask you to state your name and address for the record. If you're attending via Zoom and you want to have a public comment, we ask you to look for the icon down below to raise your hand. At that point in time, when we have public comments, we'll bring people onto the level that they can speak and talk. But we do ask the persons that are being brought on to make sure that they turn their video screen and their microphone on. When you get brought up online, those are automatically set to default, typically, with the camera off and the mute button on. So it usually takes us some time. So be on the lookout for that. It'll help speed things up. Speaking of speeding things up, we do ask any public comments to be limited to no more than 3 minutes to be respectful of everybody's time, as well as, everybody in attendance, as well as us. And we want to make sure we get everybody's opinion heard too, at a decent hour. All right. Carlos, did I miss anything?
No, Chairman, not that I'm aware of.
Good. So we'll move on to item 3. This is the comprehensive plan update. Carlos?
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. Wanted to remind everybody regarding that the city is updating its comprehensive plan. The last comprehensive plan we had was adopted in 2006. Then we did subsequent updates in 2018 and 2020 to that plan, and now we're updating the plan as a whole to reflect, as you know, and you've seen some of the demographics. Nearly 50% of Olivet's population has moved here since about 2012 to 2015, and that so it's a changing demographics, changing population, and the council recognizes that the need to update the comprehensive plan to further our land use regulations and policies. The city has set up a website, olivetcompplan.com, as you can see behind me down below, where you can register or you can participate or do both in part of the process. Most importantly, the city will be hosting a visioning workshop open to all the community next Thursday, May 18th from 6:00 p.m. to 8:00 p.m. There'll be two presentations.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you
Mhm.
said next, is it next
Excuse me.
Thursday or is it
Thursday, May 18th. So
2 weeks?
2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So we're getting closer and it's going really fast.
Yeah.
But we'll have a workshop, our consultants will host a workshop. We'll have an ice cream social and the public services facilities, there's public security and safety officials will have demonstrations, including both fire and police. This is a family-oriented event, so I urge all residents or interested parties to attend in here, because what we're doing today is zoning, and zoning is reflective of the policies that the council adopts, which ultimately reflect the goals and visions of the city's comprehensive plan in there. So this is your time to have an impact, especially for the next 10, 20 years of development here and all of that. A couple of things just wanted to note on there. We've had over 1,000 viewers on the comp plan website, which is significantly above and beyond the activity that we had in our prior plan. Of those, unfortunately, 44 have registered. So I urge residents to register on there if you want to participate and be part of the process of impacting the future development, all of that. This is important. Urge you to register so you can stay up to date in there. 213 residents have taken the survey. Back in 2006, when we had our previous comprehensive plan, of the total 18 months of the plan, only 184 people had submitted surveys. So we're moving beyond that, and we're just in the first third of this process. And over 93 residents have participated in the activities that are on site in there, and they're changing. They change them weekly to provide opportunities for comments on different types of things and trends. In addition to that, since February, we've had engagements with residents in Coffee at the Mayor here at the City Center. Last month, we were at Old Bonham School in the coffee evening with the mayor in there to engage residents through the school district. And there, Don was here this Saturday at the plant cell, trying to encourage residents to register or take on the surveys. And then we'll be at Party in the Park this Saturday at Stacy Park, again, engaging residents to participate in the process and in the surveys. Right now, given all the information that's been gathered by the consultants, they're starting to develop visions and themes. Those will be talked about or discussed at the May 18th presentation, along to taking additional comments to help solidify or modify those vision themes in there. Those themes will eventually identify trends, and those will be shared with the advisory committee next week. The advisory committee kind of assists the city's planning commission in the development of the plan. So they're always a little bit of one step ahead in the process. They'll be meeting next week to start that discussion, and then to discuss their participation component in the May 18th meeting. So that's all I had for now, Chairman. And again, I can't stress enough, if you want to have an impact, register in there. Without registering, those comments aren't recorded. Those comments aren't forwarded into to the consultant and in that process. So,
And there have been several surveys, included in there. There's some quick surveys in the beginning, but then there's some other longer ones. They're not that long, but they do make you think, which is they're very well done. So if you've done the quick one, there's other ones that are out there too. So we do encourage you, everybody who's already done it, we appreciate it, but take a look for anything else that's on there. It's a great way to kind of get your voice heard. And Dawn, did you want to mention about the special event? I think that you mentioned before with the fire
Oh, on May 18th,
Yeah.
yes, that is the ice cream social that's on our screen, begins at 6 p.m. on May 18th. We hope to see everyone there. As particularly if you are not comfortable with the website interface, if it's a great way to directly have your voice contributed to the plan.
Wasn't there going to be some sort of presentation by the fire department?
There is, well, the fire department, there will be fun in the fire bay. So we will have fire trucks, and there will be police and fire doing demonstrations. But the most important presentations are at 6:15 and 7:15 to hear about the comprehensive plan
Absolutely.
and the feedback that we've heard already thus far.
All right, good. Just was
Thank
trying to
you.
highlight a few things that were pretty exciting about it. So, okay,
Thank
we'll move on. We'll move on to public comments. So remember, these are for public comments that are not related to the agenda item. Is there anybody out in the public that has a public comment? Go ahead. Remember to wait until you get to the podium. Make sure it's on and state your name and address for the record. The red light turns on.
There you
There.
go.
Hi, yeah, this is Stephanie Todd, 7 Heather Hill Lane. And I just have a general comment about all new developments. Is there something you could do to save the trees so they don't, when these developers come in, they don't just clear cut? Because I don't remember the street, but I think it's Red Cliff or one of those. There was a huge tree in the front yard right at the street. I thought they tore down the house, the tree was there, and then all of a sudden they cut down this huge tree and it was gigantic. And even, across the way here, they just clear cut everything. And what brought it to mind was that your new developments on whatever, Birdie Lane or Long Acres, there was like a big group of trees in there. Now, again, I don't know, but now we're going to discuss sewer, and cutting down all these trees certainly exacerbates any water runoff and water flow. So I'm just saying, if somehow.
Great points. And Carlos, I'm not sure if you could, or, yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely.
So Stephanie, we've looked at this issue many times and we have not been able to figure out a good way to do that. So, and there's several reasons why. Won't go into it now, but if you're interested, and if you could come up with some ways, we would love to hear about it. At least I would.
Well, I know
Sure.
if
And
you're,
so why don't we
okay,
talk about it after, and I can
Yeah.
explain you some of the things that we have looked at and why we're very frustrated in that process of trying to come up with something that would work here and all of that.
We share your
well,
opinion.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think a lot of us
well,
do.
thank you, yeah, because
Okay.
I just get sick when I go by and I see this tree this big around cut down.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk later?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, thank
Good,
you.
good. And just briefly, there's some of the issues with it is like whenever you grade, changes the grade, can't put too much dirt over top of an existing tree, driving all the heavy equipment over it. There's a number of different things, but we'll kind of discuss that. But I think we're on the same page on that. Okay, good. Okay, any other public comments? Seeing none in the audience, Carlos, can you check the online just to see if we have anybody who's raised their hand?
Not as if yet. If anybody that is online, and there's 5 individuals, if you'd like to talk about a general comment, not regarding any of the items on the agenda, if you can show your hand, should be located in the bottom center of your Zoom screen.
We're just going to wait about 30 seconds just to make sure.
All right, Chairman, I see none.
Okay, seeing no other further public comments, we'll move on to old business. Item 5, and it's 5A 9270 Olive Boulevard Sunrise Dispensary. Carlos?
Chairman, this was discussed at our April 20th meeting. And again, I'll reiterate, this is for a proposed marijuana dispensary facility at 9270 Olive Boulevard. That's the southeast corner of Dolores Avenue and Olive Boulevard. The property is zoned what we call COR, Commercial Office Retail. and it's a legal lot of record, and the building pre-exists the COR district and is considered legally conforming on there. We have a petition to operate the dispensary at this location. The city's municipal code, chapter 450, deals with marijuana facilities and notes that marijuana facilities are permitted in any non-residential district. That was specifically adopted by the council, and they did have some locational requirements regarding distances from schools, places of worship, similar to what the state had, but no additional regulations were placed under chapter 450 that would prohibit a dispensary being located in a corner or within a strip center above and beyond those that were adopted in, of course, in the constitutional amendment or within chapter 450 itself. And I need to make that clear. That was a council decision. There was discussions about limitations and other buffers and placements, but at the end of the day, the council had made a decision that dispensaries would be permitted in any non-residential zoning district, but they would be subject to a special permit use. And I'll get into the special permit use process itself. That process is that it recognizes that the uses may be unique or contribute to some impact to the property within the property or the property surroundings, and those issues must be mitigated. The code doesn't know what those are, and that's why they go under a special permit. And it provides the council provides the commission the authority to adopt additional regulations above and beyond the code in order to mitigate those issues. The commission should review a petition that is as a special permit, determine its appropriateness, and then determine what factors and what mitigations would be necessary to make it work in there. The commission serves as a recommending body, and the ultimate decision is that of the city council. So I want to stress in the terms of whether 9270 Olive Boulevard is appropriate for a dispensary or not, that decision's been made by chapter 450. There is still that special permit process that this type of use, regardless of where the location is, should mitigate any impacts or issues regarding the operations or within the site itself. Since this item was introduced in January, we had discussions, I believe, throughout January up to date. In there, it might have been maybe in the month of March that there was nothing in there, but we continuously took in public input to help us identify issues, concerns, and things that the commission could consider and ensure are addressed as part of this process. We had an overview and a summary of what those conditions were regarding kind of breaking it up to, issues regarding safety, issues regarding traffic, issues regarding aesthetics, issues regarding our comprehensive plan and such. And since then, we've been in discussions through these meetings and with the petitioner and through the public input of what these issues are. Most significantly, the issues that are of a concern regarding this type of use, not necessarily at this location, but the configuration of this location is the parking and traffic circulation. We heard it over and over and over again, to the extent that we hired an outside consultant to conduct a traffic analysis on behalf of the city to look at the use, since it is somewhat new, in there, to determine what are the trip generations that this use is being applied through professional standards like the Traffic Institute, through references, because this use has existed in several other states for a good while, and to looking at local or regional sites and determine how those uses have been, what traffic has been impacted within 4 local sites, and then also using the data that was provided by the petitioner. They operate 3 or 4 other dispensaries in the state of Missouri, all in different type of locations and configurations in there. In their analysis, they noted that they found that the on-site parking for this type of specific use, while it is compliant with code, expressed a concern that at the peak hour, it would be short. It would be short, 1 stall short for customers and short for employees, any additional employees on there. And they expressed concern regarding that, and that the city should make sure that they secure some additional parking as part of the process, again, to address that peak hour use in there. That's just a short summary in terms of what they had. In addition to that, they expressed concerns about the olive entrance in there because it is only within 5 feet to 10 feet from the intersection of Dolores and Olive. They have their own apron and it's very close. And the concern is both from a traffic perspective and a circulation perspective. So if you have somebody that's turning on, going eastbound on Olive, and they're turning their blinker on as soon as they pass, let's say the dentist property or the financial property, the perception would be that are they turning in Dolores or are they turning in the apron that leads into this building, because they're that close and there's not much room to make a quick decision what that user is going to do or that driver is going to do. But that led to another issue because there was a lot of residents that were concerned about traffic on Dolores. We are aware of Dolores. Dolores is Dolores. It's always been Dolores. And it intersects. It only has one way in and one way out, and that's on Olive Boulevard. And Olive Boulevard is a state highway and has a high capacity in there. And it's also very close to a signalized intersection. So, we've seen activity and how close that traffic can back up, especially during the school bus. If the school bus stops, Olive pretty much stops. It's just the standard. If the signals at Price last long, especially at the 4:30 to 6:30 hour, Olive backs up going eastbound and blocks this intersection. So we're aware of that in there. That wasn't anything that was new or specific in there. But this property is still zoned commercial along with the adjacent property next door, and these type of uses have within themselves the rights to have that type of commercial activity. There are some design problems on Dolores, and the city is cognizant of those. But at this point, we don't have any intention to change or modify those. We've added some additional housing units on Dolores in that process, knowing the conditions of the street and those are decisions and choices by those buyers that have moved into that street in there. It's a public street. It's not just a public street for the residents on there, but it's a public street also for the commercial properties on both sides. So one of the things or options I think that the commission should discuss is restricting the Dolores entrance, and in doing so, it has to be cognizant. Then the Olive entrance comes into effect in there. You can't do one or the other without making the conditions either worse on the resident or worse on the petitioner. In there. And I think that the traffic analysis kind of gets into a little bit of that detail of that. The other thing was, the purpose of a special permit and the purpose of our commercial district along Olive is to further the goals and objectives of our comprehensive plan, to further the vision in there. And again, while this use is a use that is permitted by the special permit process, we really took it a close look as, beyond of bringing a user to this vacant building, doing the user needed modifications to the interior of the building. What is furthering our comprehensive plan? What are they doing to be part or also to investing in our community in there? And I think it was difficult to find what the improvements that have been submitted to date really furthered that comprehensive plan. They did the buffer screen wall along the south property line with the resident, but it's required by code. It's not anything above and beyond or dynamic. They are doing the landscape retaining wall along Dolores, but again, that's required by code. That's not anything above and beyond or anything dynamic in there. And we think that there's an opportunity at the intersection there at Dolores and Olive to do something more dynamic, similar to what McDonald's did when they added an additional drive-through, similar to what CVS did when they built in there. We know that they're not building new, but neither was McDonald's in that process. And we're trying to create, consistent with our chapter 428, a focus point at that corner and something that would enhance our corridor in our character and our identity. So you have revised site plans that have been submitted by the petitioner. In there, I'll let them go over if there's been any significant modifications to those plans that have since they come in, but they are still looking to fully utilize the olive entrance as an entrance only, and to have full access onto Dolores, and of course, connect to the cross-access easement there on the eastern side at the Shops of Price Crossing. They're also looking to add an additional parking stall along the southeast corner of the site. But that leads to another conflict because you can see there's a transitional yard. You can't, while we recognize that there is some nonconformity on the site, you can't increase the extent of nonconformity by adding that additional stall in there. But I think they were trying to address, the concerns and issues regarding the parking and adding that additional stall to be consistent with the analysis of the traffic engineer in there. They submitted some elevations since we last met on April 20th. But again, they're not consistent with chapter 428. And while we're not looking for them to rewrap the building with masonry and such, but there are things that they can do with veneer panels to enhance the masonry or the stone appeal that chapter 428 calls out in there. The commission also requested that they wanted to see, the concepts of signage, and the elevation here along Olive shows the wall signage that would be proposed on the site grounds. This is the interior in there. This is now reversed. This is the original interior that we saw, but we're now looking, it would be in a reverse concept, but I wanted to note, the activities that go into the site in there, because there's about 4,000 square feet of actual area in the 5,000 square foot building, or that is usable space, but they do have that big vault, common lobby areas and things of that nature. But when we look at retail, we look at that activity space, and you can see the floor areas here, up here, and then the office employee manager areas here.
Carlos, is this still shows the entrance being on the west, right?
Correct. This is the one. Yes, this is the original layout, that we've had to date
So
in there. But their site plan modifications would reverse that to have the entrance on the east. Okay. But I just wanted to give some frame of reference in there, because that I didn't want it to get lost in the process. So that would be essentially flipped internally in there and look a little bit different, but it still gives you an idea of the how that building would spaces would be used.
Carlos,
Yes.
this petition has been in front of us for a while now. How long will our ordinances permit us continuing to investigate and discuss?
The commission has up to 120 days to forward a recommendation to the council. And
Okay.
you are nearing that 120 days. By mid-May, you would have to forward a recommendation to the council, or be granted an extension by the petitioner to continue.
Okay, so mid-May, so that would be at our next meeting?
Correct, but we're having an open house on the 18th.
So,
So unless we scheduled a special meeting prior in there, my recommendation would be for the commission to take a motion, whether it's in support or in opposition to the special permit.
Okay.
I think, we've kind of gone through this long enough that the presentations are repetitive
mhm,
in there. And if the commission is set forth, and again, not saying that it has to be in support of it, it has no, it's not tied to that, but I think we do need to start moving this forward.
okay, just wanted to get a feel for where we were.
have we seen the monument signs that they're planning on putting?
I think the monument sign is being removed from the latest site plan, which would have been here, is no longer being illustrated.
Okay. Then there's no other ones?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I have one other question. Carlos, has the developer made any suggestions or are given any revisions, thoughts to to how they might otherwise protect the neighborhood?
In terms of
So,
security,
In terms of, but it, so that traffic doesn't circulate back into the neighborhood and end up parking there? Have they made any suggestions or?
no, not done, no.
Okay.
We've discussed a number of different
Just, I
options,
mean,
putting
just
up some.
nothing
money-
beyond separate of what's been discussed and.
Okay,
and-
that's
and
what,
meetings.
yeah, nothing new.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other further questions or comments for Carlos? Seeing none, I think we need to hear from the petitioner.
Thank you for having me back. My name is Neil Miner. I'm with Agrigenesis. Our business address is 9270 Olive Boulevard. Last time I was here 2 weeks ago, this commission had asked us to provide 4 deliverables before tonight's meeting, and I provided those to Carlos. Our civil engineer did go back into the site plan and was able to squeeze in 1 additional parking spot in the southeast corner. If that's not going to be allowed because it encroaches on the transition space, there is no other place to put another parking spot on that site. Additionally, you all had asked about what we were planning on doing for our employee parking, because we plan on utilizing all 13 of those spots for our customers. Today, I forwarded information to Carlos with an agreement that we have with JBL Financial directly to the west, that they will be leasing us 3 parking spots. And we have an ongoing 3-way negotiation for up to 5 additional spots. And those negotiations will be occurring within the next couple of weeks. Once we get our approval to begin, it's going to be 90 to 120 days while we do the build out before we're able to open. And we'll definitely have 8 to 10 parking spots for employees to be off-site and reserve those spots just for our customers. The third thing that you had asked for was exterior elevations, which I had provided to Carlos. We did have someone in-house do this until we receive a little bit of a commitment moving forward. We didn't really want to lay out the money to have these done professionally. So we had our internal marketing person, who has a lot more computer skills than I do, put these together, but he still doesn't have the correct software to do it professionally. On the north side facing Olive Boulevard, we put in an artificial green live wall. I've seen these in other communities. I haven't seen anything like this in the St. Louis area, but that's what's in the middle there, facing Olive Boulevard. It's a live green wall, but it's artificial. And the fourth thing that you had asked for was the signs. Looking at that corner as it exists right now, Dolores and Olive, there's a utility pole there, there's a street sign there, and there's one other sign there. And I don't see any way to put in a monument sign that it's actually going to be visible with everything else that's already cluttering up that corner. It's possible that we would submit a permit to have a monument sign at the east end, the northeast end of the property, but that's something that we would consider later on. And as Carlos has mentioned to me several times, the code specifically says what we can and can't have for signs. And so as long as it conforms to the code, then that's something that we might do in the future. But for right now, what we're showing is one sign on the north side of the building facing Olive.
Carlos, got a quick question. Does that meet the sign definition with all the colors? Or not the sign definition, the sign codes?
It would be limited to 7% of the sign area, and without the dimensions, it would be difficult to tell.
And again,
I
this
think
is
the
a
intent is-
concept. This is not done
Yeah.
to scale or professionally or anything else.
The commission, nor would I have any authority to allow it to exceed the, the 7%.
So
Was there any other things that
I
you?
think those were the 4 items that are new since the last time I was here.
Did you think about the whole issue with what was talked about with the neighborhood, about some signage on the neighborhood, monument signs in the neighborhood, things like that to kind of help distinguish between, the start of the residential area?
We did discuss that and we're completely committed to, doing, if it's no parking signs within the first block of Dolores, if it's signs right at the edge of a sign right at the edge of the property where the new wall will be that says, no outlet, residential neighborhood, we would certainly be committed to doing whatever this commission feels is best to reduce traffic going any further than our property on Dolores.
What about like a neighborhood sign kind of, that identifies, Dolores and, something that, that a lot of neighborhoods or streets have? With
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you can provide me with something that shows what you're looking for, then certainly we would be open to that.
Go ahead.
So I'm curious, well, and a little concerned. So how come you haven't been able to sit down and talk to the neighborhood about some of this and get some of their ideas? I mean, because they're the ones directly impacted and they're the ones.
Right. And I have spoken to some of the people in the neighborhood at these meetings, out in the hallways after the meetings,
Mhm.
and mostly what I'm hearing is they just don't want us there. Not ideas and suggestions for ways to coexist, just that would prefer we not be there at all.
Okay. That's disappointing. So you haven't really taken it any further and tried to meet with them and figure something out.
No, I have not.
Okay.
Carlos, I'm curious, if you go to the site plan, the high level with the parking, I'm looking at this. The first stall there right off of Olive. Is that something that's ever been an issue in terms of somebody backing out of that as somebody's coming in? Because it seems so close. I wasn't sure if that's a risk. If someone's to get out of there, they have to back up. They're almost not onto Olive, but they're close. So
Into the entrance.
yeah, into the entrance. And I guess I'm curious, looking at the two options, did you have based off what Carlos had put up there, the option of, maybe making it one way in and only Olive out, or closing that? Did you have your thoughts on any of those?
Our preference would be to have one way in off of Olive and have the traffic flow circulate only in a counterclockwise direction through the property.
And then the exit would be on Dolores or Price Crossing.
Correct.
Okay. What did you think about the other option of only in on Dolores and only out on Olive?
It's something that we would have to discuss. I don't think it's ideal. But it's a lot better than closing the Olive Boulevard entrance.
And Carlos, I'm sorry to my question. I asked it, then I pivoted, but I'm just curious, like in the backup, it seems like a risk to me, but I don't know.
Answering the first question is whether I'm aware of any incidents that have taken place regarding a car backing up and hitting a car entering or so. No, I'm not in there. I can check with the police department to see if there's anything that's been recorded in the past in there. They've seen these plans, nothing was that.
Nothing raised to them. that
Yeah,
was
correct. In there, but I didn't ask them to do a search.
No, and I wasn't, I'm just
Mhm.
thinking historically, is that something that's been?
No, it's a
concern?
fair question.
It just
and
seemed
there-
to tight to me, but it's not my area of expertise at all.
Regarding the second component of that question is it's bad design. I mean, it is bad design and in no way would I would find it hard to believe that the Missouri Department of Transportation would permit that type of entrance being installed if this was a new site, a new construction, regardless of the grading conditions in there. But it is there. I mean, and there's no doubt about it. And it's been in existence since I think the building was built. And there on the conversation that happened afterwards, the key thing here and in the traffic analysis, and even what we started back in January, is that, the issue isn't whether which is best coming in or coming out on this apron on Olive. it's its impact that it has on the traffic on Olive Boulevard. And again, we can't control the volume of traffic on Olive Boulevard. There's so many things that are outside of our sphere and influence. I mean, you have U City and the recent development that's going in place. You have Creve Coeur and their development in place. And you have I-170. So, you know, trying to solely control traffic volumes on Olivet properties is not a solution or good for the city as a whole. But trying to better manage how that traffic moves on Olive is a priority, and it's one of the fundamental core pillars of our current comprehensive plan. And it was furthered when we did the 2020 Olive Corridor study in there. The issue is specifically safety. If you're going eastbound and you have the opportunity to make a right turn lane here and then roughly in a 20-foot distance here, you know, the car that is going westbound, which may be turning into Dolores, is going to be confused of whether this car is going to go into Dolores or was really having their blinker on to turn into the development. There's no way to tell. And the traffic analysis does a pretty good overview in there. And, you know, not being a traffic expert, but I can't, it's reasonable to see what the issue is in there. I think, you know, from a planner's perspective, and even in the analysis, you know, that entrance should be closed. However, given the concerns we've heard from residents, one way to mediate that is to maintain that entrance, but having that entrance as an entrance only still gives us the same issue regarding the traffic analysis recommendation. Reversing that and having it as an out only, while still not a great idea, but at least it takes the traffic concerns of the stacking from Dolores out of that, you know, out of that component.
Yeah. I mean, there's no perfect solution to your
No.
point with the ratings. I tend to like that concept of the exit only on the Olive, how it's forced, you know, can it be a curb cut, right? So people can't force a left or something like that, or things like that. It doesn't solve everyone, but it's maybe the best of the worst, or so.
It is, but I can, again, trying to balance, you know, the needs of the developer, the needs of the property owner, and the needs of the residents and their concerns about traffic on Dolores. You know, this is a means to try to mitigate that in there. It's not professionally an ideal solution, but sometimes you have to make these decisions in there to be able to meet both parties and come up with some type of collaborative effort in there. Ideally, it's not our goal, but maintaining that, you know, as an entry, those 2 points that, you know, nearly about 20, they're, you know, this line right here is 20 feet from the property line, and then there's the curb in there. So you're looking at about a 25, 30-foot distance between those 2 points. Car length is probably going to be about 20 feet. So
I always hate going against any, you know, consultant, what they say, especially if they're an expert in their field. You know, so I would want to have that as an exit only, probably what the consultant recommends.
Well, they actually prefer it closed, I think, as the consultants, but that's their recommendation. But if we had, but second choice would be exit
Exactly.
only, and I tend to agree.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that?
Leaving it open and having it exit only is not a deal breaker.
And then only entrance only on Dolores?
And price is both, right?
price would have to be.
Yeah, price would be both.
Unless we made that just exit only.
Because what happens when the car doesn't hit Dolores and they look and they see that that it's an exit only,
Yeah, I was just,
They gotta get back around.
They want a price and they come
They're
in for
gonna have to
price.
come back to price to get in.
I don't disagree with you. I was just seeing if we did that, we might be able to get that extra space.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying, but I think
Yeah.
you gotta, and not only that, you gotta let the people get out of there if there's a problem.
Yeah, and I tend to like the idea of going through price as a option versus Dolores.
Mhm.
People use that.
Bigger roadway.
Okay, any further discussion on the outside of the building?
Got it.
Oh, I'm
Question.
sorry.
Just a
please.
clarification question on the potential 5 additional spots. Is that agreement going to be with JBL or somebody else? You can't
I
say, you
don't-
could
I
just say
don't know
somebody
yet.
else.
I
Okay,
don't know yet.
all right.
There are 3 parties involved in it.
Okay.
And JBL is one of them.
How far away is the JBL property? Is it?
It is directly across the street.
So a little bit over 35 feet or about 35 feet from curb, property line to property line.
Across from Dolores or across from Olive?
Across from
Dolores.
Dolores.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? I'll tell you, I'm not that excited about the way it looks,
About what?
the way it looks.
Okay,
I'm not an architect, so I'm gonna lean on our architects or other people with design. Better design thoughts than I do.
There would be 2 things that I would note. And again, our codes are all fully publicly accessible. Chapter 428. Which provides, the commission with the guidance of what are acceptable materials. In there, or the core thing is to promote the use of masonry. In there. In that, especially for new construction. But there are provisions that allow for alternative uses and things, and also recognitions that materials have changed and you can now get the things through, panelized systems, through drive it and all that. So I would first note to the commission through chapter 428 again, the first thing would look is how to increase masonry. In this case, it may be a veneer panel on there, and if the commission would find that acceptable, to get that to at least 40% of the exterior. And again, I'm not recognizing that you can, brick this or in any way in that. I think it would be, and this is not a owner occupied, correct? This is
Correct.
at least, that the architectural panels have really come around. And with inflation, you can't say the same thing, but the costs are not as prohibitive in there. And I would encourage, the commission, to stick with chapter 428 in what it requires first, and that is to increase the amount of masonry on the elevations, and I think at least up to 40%. I think it, trying to do the whole building would be is trying to, they're investing in the building too, but I think trying to balance those costs. Yes.
Yeah, also I wanted to point out that they're still showing the roof gables here. And we talked about the need to eliminate those for safety purposes.
so
Which I think is important.
the windows that are all the way around the building. It doesn't, I'm not sure how well you can see it there, but we're going to have metal panels that are going to cover over the windows for security reasons. And we could do the same exact thing on the skylight windows as well and cover those with a metal panel to discourage people from trying to enter the building that way.
Is that going to be all the time they're going to be covering or just during non-business?
No,
hours?
there will be permanent covering.
Okay.
What about maybe just putting a panel across the whole front, something, not the whole front, but the whole front of that skylight area?
Yes, correct.
So it doesn't look like 3 windows,
Yes.
so it looks like a solid.
Sawtooth.
No,
Yeah.
we've had other developments that have come in, both new and existing, worth taking a look. The windows on the Firestone elevation facing Olive are, they're Fox windows, or I think FAUX is the term that they use in there. But that was new construction, and that's easier to do in there. If you go to the charter facility on Human Industrial Drive, which was an existing building, but given it is the, I forgot what they use the term, but the hub for all of Spectrum Internet goes there, so it's well secured. They have Fox windows on that elevation, and what that Fox window does, it provides the same security, but it looks more like a traditional window. If you do a metal panel system, which not necessarily opposed, but I think it behooves the commission to get more, we need to be informed of what it's going to look like.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say, is we definitely want to see that panel before that went
Sure.
up. That would be a high profile piece of artwork almost that you guys are going to be putting up there. And I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not sure of the commission, but I don't think, and the masonry is good or whatever, but it doesn't have to be full masonry blocks or anything like that, but it could be some other kind of panel system, metal panels, any different thing to make it not look like a siding building. I think that's what the commission's looking for. It doesn't have to be, but there's got to be, like he said before, a wow factor that shows what, that is different, that it's not just a siding building on Olive. And I think that's what we're looking for as a commission.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that when Carlson mentioned this as well, and I don't want to lose sight of it, is that I'd like to see a little more dynamism, I guess, with regards to the site plan and its interaction with the street. In order to take a serious look at our requirements for chapter 428 and how we expect the site to interact with Olive Street Road corridor in this instance. It's not just walk across the grass and you're in the building kind of, transition, but more of a landscaped, perhaps a concrete wall, there's a number of options in there, and you can work with Carlos on that, but that's extremely important because how this looks is just a piece of what we're addressing throughout the corridor, what we're trying to reach. And so what you decide to do there is very important to all of us. And I don't want to lose sight of that at all.
No, and I understand where you're coming from. If you all have ideas or suggestions, we're open to hearing them. At the last meeting, I heard several times, you're looking for a wow factor, you're looking for something dynamic. And one of the members of our team said, look, there's nothing else in all of that with these metal design cutout window coverings and a live green wall. That would be a wow factor. That would be dynamic. So that's what we presented up there. But if it's not something that you all like, we need to hear from you exactly what you want. So that we're not continuing to present idea after idea and hearing from different people. I like this, I don't like this.
We're not designers as such. So, it's nice to say, but that's not gonna happen. I mean, it's not up to the commission to design your project.
Okay.
So I would suggest that you work with Carlos on your ideas, because they have to be your ideas, they're not our ideas. And there's a lot of thoughts and so on in the ordinance itself about things to look at, and Carlos can work with you on that. But I think we've put pretty much what we can within that document. So I suggest that you pay a lot of attention to it, and work with Carlos on what it means, and how to implement.
Okay.
And they're good, and again, going back to chapter 428, there are good illustrations in there. Commission made great efforts to identify in these are the black and whites, but we do have the colored renderings in there only because I'm picking up what's acceptable in terms of creating that corner effect in there. This is not a principal corner where we expect a fountain, but it is a corner that the expectation is that there's a hardscape, a defined area, and a focal point. And those are pretty fundamental. I can come up with a design, but that's a personal choice. So that this is the whole purpose of chapter 428 was not to discourage creativity from the public, from the private side, but to give them that guidance. It needs to have a hardscape, a defined perimeter, and a focal point. You know, examples, there's the McDonald's sign just down the block. There's the Veterans Plaza across the street. There's a CVS. All of them look different. And all of them are acceptable. And there's some more guidance, again, going back into the code, just as there is about the screen wall and the transition areas and what is permitted and what isn't. So take a good look at those in there, because I think, you know, again, your team can probably come up with better solutions that fit your needs than me telling you what it should be.
Are all your stores white with blue highlights?
Yeah, no, not all of them.
What are some of the ones that don't have?
So our store in Maryville is actually has a blue front with white trim and a yellow door. The store in Clinton, it had a masonry veneer around the bottom of the front of the building when we bought it. And so we painted the trim on that building. And the existing one here in St. Louis, the building was already white when we started leasing it, and it has a yellow door.
Just not a big fan of that, but honestly, I'm an engineer, you know what I mean? So I'll leave it as that. So
Okay.
I don't know, it just seems bright, you know, so I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that as well, but I just thought I'd mention them, so. So the parking, we're still short that one based on the consultant's recommendation.
Mhm.
So what is your idea? If you can't get another space in, what is your thoughts for addressing? When potentially you would have peak hours where employees or not employees, customers would not have parking there.
I think that these peak hours are going to be so infrequent that maybe a customer will circle the parking lot for 5 minutes before a spot opens up. I honestly feel like 99.9% of the time, 13 parking spots is going to be sufficient for the number of customers that we have. If another spot's not allowed on that site, then I don't know where we would get another parking spot.
So how are you gonna, you know, during peak times, how will you specifically address that, you know, kind of
Mhm.
somebody circling or, you know, things like that, where somebody's looking for a spot?
We have at other times during peak hours. We've staffed people out in the parking lot directing traffic and acting as line leaders. Even though we were staffed for that, we didn't end up having to utilize it because the turnover of the parking spots was occurring fast enough that there wasn't necessarily the need for that. But we would implement a tool such as that of just having someone staffed in the parking lot directing traffic.
Can you commit to that?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Go ahead, Karen.
I think we've talked about most of them.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I think we'll hear now from the public.
Okay,
Right,
thank you.
thank you. Does anybody in the public have a comment on this particular agenda item? Go ahead. Remember to state name and address.
But better now.
Yeah.
Ishan Desai, 9318 Kenneth. Oh, is this on, sir?
Yes,
It
yes,
is.
it
When
should
it's
be.
red, it's on.
Sorry, I can't see that red line right here. So just to get started, I'm glad for the opportunity to speak. This should be much faster than 3 minutes. But so based on new design, and I clearly have bias, but I've seen a lot of good looking dispensaries. The Sunrise the dispensary in Clinton is actually an attractive building. It looks similar to Home State, you know, nice brick veneer. So this is not that, but there are attractive dispensaries that I wouldn't, you know. But for just some quick points to have, the most important one that I have is parking with the offsite parking at JBL and wherever additional parking that they may secure, probably from the lawyer's office attached to JBL. But I find it tricky because in the Olivet General Provisions in Ordinance 2683, it talks about the third clause, clause C, that, you know, when you can get parking and if it's off-site, it should be in a place that, you know, it should be without causing unreasonable traffic congestion, detriment to any residential neighborhood or hazard to pedestrians. So how many places in Olivet hypothetically do we have that are retail businesses that people have to cross streets for employees to go to work? It probably is not common, but I'm not an expert. It doesn't seem like, you know, a good design. And then just for some other quick points, like as residents here, we're kind of trapped a little bit. The city doesn't want to put a stoplight because it's going to slow traffic down, and I completely understand
It's
that.
not the
I
same.
don't think the city's made any decision about a traffic light.
No, we can't.
No,
Yeah,
I know, but like,
that's- okay.
it's never been mentioned, and right now it will not be, you know, it's
Just point of information, it's a county road, so we don't have
State road.
state road. Thank you.
oh,
We don't have control of how that's handled and
because we get nervous that there's going to be a lot of buildup and you're going to get exiting off Dolores. And then it's going to be hard to turn off and on. And the impression I got is like, we don't want to slow down traffic on Olive because it's just not ideal.
It's a
So like,
state
so-
highway, so.
Right, so we don't want to get stuck there and have no way to go in and out. And from last week's meeting, you know, the owner of Keith Properties, you know, he doesn't want to give residents access to go through because it may impact his pedestrians, and I respect that stance, but then we're kind of stuck, and then, you know, and it's hard for us to leave and go about our business. We have narrow streets, and the biggest issue with signage is right now there actually is a no parking sign, but it's turned sideways. So when you look at it, you can't actually see it. You know what I mean? But even that, like a simple sign won't be enough. And just for reference, if you ever spend 5 minutes circling a parking lot, it feels like forever in your heart. You know, just 5 minutes is not a short amount of time. But just for all those reasons, you know, parking is a challenge, and all that is poor design. And we expect, you know, better looking building if it's going to impact us in such a bad degree. Thank you very much.
thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Stefan.
Stephanie Todd, 7 Heather Hill Lane. Seems that the two main issues haven't adequately been addressed. The parking, so they're gonna lease parking across Dolores. Well, so that's just gonna almost make it worse on Dolores now, because now you've got people parking on the other side of it. They're gonna try to walk across and get there. So now you've got people going in and, you know, to park on the other side of Dolores. And then he still needs more parking spots. And the answer is, well, trust me, I'll find them. So parking is still an issue. And the traffic there's nothing that's changed with the traffic. I mean, it's still going to be a mess on Dolores unless you completely block off that entrance solely. And then, you know, I don't know if has anybody talked to Yowitz about using Price Crossing. I mean, what a mess. I mean, that parking lot gets filled up now, and that bank that's at the end is
He was at the
vacant.
last meeting and we discussed that.
Oh,
with him.
okay, all right, so sorry,
That's all right.
but okay, so if he's okay with parking going, because that parking lot can be a mess now, and that bank at the end, it moved, and so that's not leased right now, so that's gonna be more crowded too. So it goes back that this just isn't a good site for a retail business with this amount of traffic and employees. It just doesn't work.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
Mike's on. Good evening.
Remember, state your name and address.
Yes, Matt Hirsch, 9709 Fairgreen Drive. And I was also the real estate broker associated with this transaction. I guess I got a couple, I guess I got a number of questions. I guess specific, I guess, when I start off with Carlos. We're here tonight, correct? Because specifically of this contemplated use, correct? That is to say that if I, as a real estate broker, was to bring in conforming office use, we wouldn't be here tonight, would we?
The petition was for a special permit.
I
for
understand,
the
but
dispensary.
under a different circumstance.
By the code, dispensary requires a special permit.
Again, hypothetically, the dispensary goes away and a new user comes in and it's a conforming office use. Would we be in front of your committee tonight?
No,
Okay. Guys. These guys go away. We're gonna find an office use. You're gonna have a yellow building there for the next 10 years. Just as the reality. This isn't fair. We came to you guys. I have a letter from Olivet saying that this building is a completely conforming building, that we have no issue whatsoever with any zoning, and that we are not subject to any of this. Now, I get it. This letter was earlier, but it was within, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months. And now we find ourselves here and we're, I don't know, 120 days. It's crazy. This needs to get done. I beg you guys, please call a vote. These guys have done everything that you've asked, but this 40% masonry coverage, I've been at most of these meetings, never heard you guys say that. Never heard of 40% masonry coverage. There's not been any direction. These guys keep shooting in the dark and it's just not fair. As a real estate broker who brings business to your community, I'm saying, do the right thing tonight. Call the vote, get this thing moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments from the public? Go ahead, sure.
Hello, Jeff Schneider, 9324 Kenneth Place. Again, some of my comments are similar to what I've said in the past. I think we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole sort of thing. It's very clear that we're trying to figure out ways how to maneuver, figure out how to address the parking, the traffic and everything. In the end, this is just not the right spot for this business, high volume business. I don't see any way, none of the solutions that I've heard or proposals that I've heard alleviate, any of the concerns, honestly. Close this entrance, reverse it this way. You still come back to the same base problems that this site just isn't meant for a higher volume sort of thing. As far as the look of the building and everything, for me, if somebody wants me to go out and, paint the building white, I'll be happy to go over there and, slap a coat of paint on it. But, reality is the drawings, everything, I just heard the previous person say, they're bending over backwards. If I'm not mistaken, it was asked multiple meetings, give us a rendering, give us something like this from the very beginning of these meetings. And the most that I've seen now is, white coat of paint with now a little bit of green on front of there. So I'm not sure bending over backwards is truly accurate for how much the petitioner has really, gone to address some of those questions. In the end, they have to adhere to whatever, makes the building look nice, that sort of thing. But, I would kind of think it's a little overstated to say they've just bent over backwards on this, because like I said, thus far, I haven't really seen much difference than what we heard a couple of months ago. So.
Very good. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your comments. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Cinda Schneider. I'm at 9324 Kenneth Place. Thank you for the time you invest in hearing from residents regarding this building. The bottom line is that this site is zoned for COR, commercial office retail, but not designed for high volume commercial office retail. You are trying to force it to work when it's not going to be a good fit. And having high volume traffic is just an accident waiting to happen. It's not if a kid or a person will get hit, it's when. My assumption is that the demographic of the biggest customer is young men. They are the highest to insure because they are the most reckless drivers. I ask all of those who are part of granting permission to the petitioner because I cannot choose which one of us and our kids will be the sacrificial accident to prove this spot is wrong. The "I told you so." My mom was a nurse and she would say the only thing worse than causing a fatal accident is paralyzing someone for the rest of their life. It is a slow death. For the past 60 years, our neighborhood has had families and kids, and with the addition of 6 new 3 to 4 bedroom family homes, it will continue to be a neighborhood that has kids for the next 20 plus years. Our neighborhood will have kids until it is no longer safe to live there. Please, for the safety of everyone, say no to any high volume business. It's not better to just get something in there than the safety of the kids and people. Please explain to me how a high volume, wrong fit business is worth more than the life of my child. One final point, just because the guy has asked nicely and waited patiently does not entitle him to a yes. That this process has taken so long only makes it more glaringly obvious how wrong a fit this is. If it was a good fit, none of us would still be here. For the safety of everyone, please say no to any high volume, high traffic business in that location. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name's David Rozovsky, 9311 Kenneth Place. Just want to reiterate one point that everybody has already brought up. I won't take too much time doing so. But as Carlos mentioned, Dolores is Dolores. There's not a lot of space there. As people start to frequent that and come in and out of the neighborhood, it is going to be significantly more challenging for emergency vehicles to get in and out of the neighborhood. As somebody else also mentioned just a minute ago, our kids walk to the corner by JBL Financial to get on and off of the bus during business hours. There's no sidewalks on Dolores either, so they'll be walking on the street by a requirement to get home, which I think is probably less than ideal. The other point I want to bring up is that my wife and I frequent the establishment, the dispensary in U City. And the last time we were there, the lobby was absolutely packed. There were probably 20 people waiting in the lobby on a Friday night. So to tell us that peak hours are not going to be a problem, it is a problem at the dispensary in U City. And I think it's naive for us to think that it won't be a problem at this establishment as well. Thank you, guys.
Very good. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else? Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Ben Turek. I'm the owner of the building at 9270 Olive. Okay, I operated an advertising agency there for over 40 years. I can tell you, I had 10 employees, and all of the media, radio, television, print, all came to visit me to sell me their time and their space. That's what we did. We billed over $10 million a year doing that for 40 years. I will tell you, we did utilize that parking space on the side that you're talking about. It wasn't marked, but we utilized actually 3 spaces up there. We never had any accidents. No one ever really tried to back out. I mean, backing out of there was so much easier to just turn in and go out the entrance exit on Olive. Traffic definitely does get backed up 4:30 to 6:15-ish. It gets better. Now you've got construction going on down there, so it's worse. But I will tell you, it was easy to get out when it backed up, because people saw you trying to get out with your signal, and they're kind. They just let you in. So I never had a problem making a left turn in or getting out. I don't recall any accidents there at all. It was just, and Dolores is a great little neighborhood. I think I haven't heard mentioned, it's a dead end street. It don't, you know, we used to take walks down there because the park was down there. So literally it's about, I would say, a block and a half and it dead ends. So I don't see anyone going down Dolores. If they did, they made an error and they're going to turn around in somebody's driveway. But most people are just going to turn down Dolores or actually go in the entrance that we have there. And Olive people are courteous. I mean, I don't have, it's actually easier when it's backed up because that light on Price is terrible. I could say put a stop sign at Dolores, but I don't know if that's going to make anything different. It's just going to happen. But I feel like people are going to let you come in and come out. I've always found that. I've never had anyone complain. That's number one. And you're giving, from what I understand, you're going to have an easement going out through down to Price Road through the other shopping center. So that helps out a lot. I don't know. I think a lot of this dispensary talk is it's 1960s dope, crazy people. I don't see drunks hanging out at liquor stores outside, and we're not going to see dope addicts hanging out. So I think we got to get past that. This is a dispensary. I think people are just thinking it's a dispensary. 13 people. This is not a high volume business. Comparing it to McDonald's is totally ridiculous. So
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Thank
it. All right. Anyone else?
Hey guys, thank you for your patience. I'm a high school PE teacher. I got here as soon as I could.
Please state your name and address. for the
Yeah,
record.
Mickey Wendling, 1034 Dolores Avenue. I'm about 3 houses down from the proposed dispensary. It's not about marijuana at all for me. That must be the guy that's in charge. This is my first time here. All right. Do you remember when we can go around the neighborhood looking for your friends' bikes in the front yards? Or seeing a sprinkler arching its way back and forth as giggling kids of all ages jump through the strands of water, guaranteed to get wet no matter how high they jumped? Retired neighbors would look after your house instead of a ring doorbell. Communication happened in person instead of by tweet, and courage and confidence were shaped by kids bringing their bikes farther and farther up the hill in their attempts to show control at high speed. Those were the days. On Dolores Avenue, those are still the days. My name's Mickey Wendling, and I've lived at 1034 Dolores Avenue for 7 beautiful years. From time to time, my wife and I will say how lucky we were to find this street, the melting pot in the center of it all. We've joked about instead of finding the diamond in the rough, we found the real in the rich. My wife grew up in Chevy Chase and then Berkeley Place before she went to college. My in-laws still live at Berkeley Place. When we were looking for a place to settle down, we crossed our fingers that we would find a place in the community to join them. With our combined income of less than $80,000, we knew we could not live in the mansions that surround our town, nor could we live up to the square footage that my wife grew up in. But we could live the lifestyle of Olivet. We believed in it. We could walk to Stacy Park, bike up to the school events, and skip down to Villa Park. Upon buying our house, neighbors were quick to come over with a bottle of wine, welcoming us with open arms to a street from the past. We learned about the history of our house and how its last 97 years, it has changed from a farmhouse, Beats, to a speakeasy and even a house of ill repute. We smiled over conversation of what we would bring to the brick house that we plan to keep standing for all of our days. We can't afford to move anywhere else, not in Olivet. That's our home. We plan to stay here because of the culture our street holds. As we go on a family walk every night the weather allows, and we see Shaman's family, we hear different languages being spoken, smell the aroma of unfamiliar spices in the air, and hear children giggling and crying while our kids run along the tar lines of the road, staying out of the lava. Every once in a while, I'll see a car pull onto the street that I don't recognize, And I watched them drive all the way down the street, just as he said, all the way down the street, only to realize it's a dead end. I apologize, my phone moved.
You also got about 20 seconds. So
Oh,
try to wrap it up if you can.
yes, I sent this to you guys. I'm going to read it. I'm always quick to yell out, watch out for the car, as passersby don't know the kid could pop out from anywhere along the way. Construction has caused headaches for us in the past few years, not from the noise or the sinking asphalt over the sewer line, but from the concern of our children's safety. We bought new bright yellow cones for our kids to put out when they play, but studies even show that people stop seeing the signs that are constantly out. We're just doing what we can. You see, we don't have sidewalks on our street. My 4-year-old runs to a neighbor's house and rides his balance bike as his 6- and 7-year-old brothers are kicking soccer balls, playing foursquare, or running down to the end of the street to join one of the kindergarten companions. In the morning, my wife walks the boys to the bus stop, a lot of times running because kids always seem to be late.
Sir,
My
we're going to have to
4-year-old may
stop.
throw a
So
tantrum
thank you.
and sit in the street.
All right. Sorry, everybody. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none in the audience. Carlos, will you?
Carlos, don't forget to use your microphone.
Mr. Murray, I'm going to transfer you to a panelist. If you can ensure that you turn on, of course, both your audio and video, state your name and address.
Hi, Jason Murray, 9328 Kenneth Place. I'll keep this brief, just have a few dumb questions. So it's on the record that the expert that the city hired has recommended closing the entrance at Olive and for safety reasons, not, unless I'm misremembering, not, let's make it exit only or entrance only is okay. Like, I think they recommended, if I remember our discussion, closing it. I'm just wondering what sort of, if the commission decides not to do that, what sort of legal liability that creates for the city, just as a taxpayer. I just would like to know, I don't know the answer, I'm just asking questions. But if we go against what the experts recommended and there's some sort of an accident, is the city at, and as taxpayers, are we at some kind of risk for some big wrongful death judgment or something like that? Again, I truly don't know the answer. But, I think as a resident, it'd be something that would be worth exploring and trying to get the answer to a question like that. And similarly, the expert the city hired recommended one additional spot, period. And if a customer is circling the parking lot for 5 minutes and I don't know, during those 5 minutes of circling hits a pedestrian, is the city potentially liable because we knew that one additional spot was required, but by the experts, but that the city didn't require it of the business? Again, I don't know if that creates some liability for the city, for the taxpayers, and putting our tax dollars at risk. So, and similarly with the pedestrians crossing Dolores, the employees, if somebody's hit there, do all of these things create liability for the city? And I don't know. It's something that feels like it's worth looking into. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Carlos, anyone else?
Yes, I got one more. 1 second. Okay, Kate H., I believe that's Ms. Hellman. I'm going to promote you to panelist. Ms. Hellman, if you can ensure that you turn on your mic and video and state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Kate Hellman. I live at 800 North Price. And I just want to reiterate the concerns that have been brought up over these months since this has been an item on the PCDC's agenda. And those are the concerns with traffic and with parking. Those were concerns from the very beginning, and it just doesn't seem that those concerns really have been resolved. Even with the traffic study and the expert perspective that was provided, the plans have not changed in terms of parking and traffic, and the burden that this business could potentially place on the neighbors within the Dolores, Kenneth, and Tess neighborhood is clearly heavy, and they're clearly worried about it. And I think the fact that the street is a dead-end street makes those traffic and parking concerns even worse, because there's already parking on the street with the residents there. To have additional cars come through this road that's already very narrow. It's a safety concern, obviously. We've been discussing this since this was first brought onto the agenda. My biggest concern, I guess, is what happens if there are difficulties on the street, where folks in Dolores now have customers for this dispensary coming and using their driveways as turnaround points, or parking on the street and blocking traffic even further. What sorts of recourse do the residents of the neighborhood have should those issues that we're concerned about actually come to fruition? And I just haven't heard resolution of those issues over these past few months. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kate.
Chairman, a couple of themes that have come.
Anyone else?
No, that was it, sir.
Okay, good.
A couple of things just to address and give you the direction from as city planner in that. The first is parking. Understand that based on the classification of this use under our current zoning code, this site complies with the required parking. We heard the concerns of the residents expressing that the volumes here would be excessive. Therefore, we hired a traffic consultant to conduct an analysis based on the information that was out there. And in that analysis, you need to take it as a whole. You know, it says this is a new use, and it's, you know, everything's kind of changing and modifying in there. But in a peak hour, based on the information that was provided by the petitioner, that it takes one customer about 15 minutes to complete a transaction or so, that in a peak hour, they would be short one stall. They didn't say throughout the day they're going to be short one stall. They said in a peak hour, they would be short one stall. And I think we're taking that into consideration because this is now a special permit. It's not a permitted use by right in there, and making the necessary requests is, can you accommodate with some additional parking? You meet code, but recognizing the information that was provided by the code consultant, you know, just the customer, it was just short one. Not only, you know, there was also the issues about employees. Well, then we go back to the code. The code specifically states you can have that parking within 300 feet as long as it's reasonable in there. So here's this back and forth about Dolores. You know, there are kids playing in Dolores, but this street should not be crossed by employees. I agree. There has to be a defined pedestrian connection across Dolores if they're going to utilize off-street parking from the other side of the street. And I note that as one of the recommended conditions in there. But you know, it's trying to balance what we're hearing. Their employee traffic going across the street hopefully will help mitigate some of that traffic too in that same process. No different than people crossing or walking in the street or in the dead end cul-de-sacs or going to Villa Park. I agree, there is a need for sidewalks on Dolores. It needs to be done. It will be part of the discussion of the comprehensive plan to help prioritize areas that need to be, we need to improve pedestrian access. And this is definitely one that I've noted and will continue to support that is necessary. So all residents can access Villa Park. In there, not just, those in close proximity, but our businesses and people north of Olive should have the same rights and access to that park in there. So again, the parking issue, we recognize it, and because this is a special permit, we're scrutinizing it even more than we would have if this was a permitted use by right. In addition to that, we've heard from different people talk about businesses and all that. This is a traditional business cycle, and this is a new business within our region. And right now they are in that growth, trajectory, but essentially it is going to peak. This will be within the Olive Corridor. I believe the fourth one between Skinker and probably up to Fifi Road. This will be the fourth one. Then there's one off of Lindbergh. And then I'm sure that there will be more to come over time. So eventually it's going to mature, and eventually there's going to be enough competition that peak is probably going to change, because there's more opportunities and other locations that you can access, this new industry that essentially was really kind of started in February or so. So yes. So I guess my issue is like, we heard the concern, and we're trying to mitigate it as best we can within the code standards. Second, disinvestment. Yes, that building needs more than just TLC. I looked at the building permits. The last building permit, other than for a sign, issued to this building itself was 1986. So that was 44 years ago. And you haven't done anything else to that building. Maybe painted it and all that, but now's the time to look for an opportunity to invest in your community. You have a good tenant that's probably going to sign a good lease in there, and what is it, $18 a square foot that's going, then that's like a low number near Olive and 170. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what it's a pretty decent return on there. We're asking for investment in the community, no different than the investment of the tenant and the investment into the owners. Direction. Yes, our role is to help facilitate the petitioner through the plan commission process. Our role is also to inform the petitioner of the city's ordinances and regulations. And we did so from the very beginning. We have emails from the very start before January. These are the codes you need to read. No, I do not read the codes verbatimly to the petitioners, but that information is there. That issue is the petitioner's team. They hold the responsibility. They're the paid team to inform the petitioner of the codes and regulations. My process or my role representing the city is not to develop this site. It's to further the development of this site and provide them the guidance to that. So I just want to make clear on that, if the reins are on me, I have some really good ideas of how to improve the site. Odds are that's going to be going, $24 to $30 a square foot, and then just to break even. All right. On liability, it's a very good question, and it's more for the city attorney. But we all know that the city is exempt from legal aspects and things of that nature. And I can inquire with Mr. Martin to ensure that he addresses that question if the commission decides to take action, or they'd like Mr. Martin to come in and talk about the city's liability role in that process. The traffic analysis was used for the purposes of guidance, for them to provide us some guidance in there. The city in no way relinquished its right or its authority for the traffic analysis to determine what is required in there. And then the special permit process. That is a unique process that's provided under that ordinance, that if things don't work out, if we are having issues, if the residents have concerns and they're being recorded and brought forward, those issues can be brought to the city council, and the city council has the authority to revoke a special permit. That's part of the whole process and things. And in our adopting ordinance, that is noted in that process in there. So if these issues do result in terms of what's being described, yes, those would again be brought to the council, and the council has the authority to make a decision to either try to mitigate that, give them a warning or revoke the permit. Period. And that's pretty standard in Missouri law for Missouri communities. So it's nothing unique just to all of that, or that we came up or saying or trying to say that, just so to appease an audience. It's not. That is a standard practice of a special permit.
Carlos, great summary and great points that you made. And I appreciate that. Let me ask you a question. It seems to me that we still have some issues kind of with the outside, of the look and whether it meets that, 428 standard, providing that dynamic, sense of place. Personally, do we have the opportunity to vote on this now? Do we have that opportunity to vote without having that information?
My recommendation to the commission would be to consider a conceptual approval with the petitioner coming back to the commission for site plan and community design, final site plan and community design review. And again, and we've heard, a statement by the petitioner earlier, it becomes this, how far am I going to go if I don't even know if I can even go there yet?
Right.
In there. And I think we need to get past that so we can focus on the improvements and furthering the vision of the comprehensive plan.
Makes sense. I'm going to ask you to repeat that then. Go ahead, Karen.
Mr. Chairman, I was gonna kind of say what Carlos just said to us, but we could play round robin about this forever.
Right.
I mean, the petitioner needs to put some concrete, no pun intended, ideas on paper and give them to our staff.
Right.
And the neighborhood needs to meet with the petitioner and they need to discuss ideas and they need to move it for their process forward. We can't design for them.
Right.
Now there's no question. This is going to be an intense use during certain periods of the day. And the petitioner is going to have to find solid ways to make sure that the neighborhood is still taken care of and needs to present those ideas to us. And we need to, we need to see some of that before we give final approval. Conceptually, I could get behind it now and say, I'd like, I could support the idea because it's on our commercial corridor, of course. But at the same time, they're gonna have to come back with some ideas for real, not just, ethereal discussion. But we really need to see what they can actually put in the ground and how they're gonna actualize some of their thoughts.
Yeah, that's great. Good comments. Anyone else?
Carlos, I think for the special permit, what always is trying to get my head around is, I recognize this is zoned commercial, COR, so that's not an open question, right? But then it requires special permit because of the use. When we're approving a special permit, it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, our responsibility to look at in terms of, is it the right business, the right place, or is it that high traffic or not? It's more around questions of parking, entrance, signage, aesthetics, those kind of things. The city council, if we were to even approve, city council then chooses more the final approval of that special permit, correct?
Correct. You are the recommending body. And in to answer the first component of your question more specifically, in a special permit, in a zoning ordinance, it say uses are just called out. You can have this, you can have this, you can have this, you can have this. In a special permit, it will call out a specific use, and typically that use has additional conditions. And now we can't always be all encompassing of every condition that would be appropriate, but certain conditions are called out that it needs to meet. Under chapter 450, the council called out those specific conditions. And I think those were outlined earlier in the report.
And I guess what I'm saying is we're beholden to the concept of a special permit, not how I put this, it's not our feelings of it, whether we like it or not, or like the building or like the business or what we think about it. I'm just trying to understand what's in our
The,
scope.
the
of control.
council kind of identified that any, this use along a non-residential district was appropriate.
Okay.
In there, but recognize that, you know, all the individual lots will have specific and unique situations in which some issues will have to be mitigated. They couldn't call those all out. And in the case of 9270, what we've heard repeatedly is traffic, pedestrian access, circulation, all these, and that's why we're, you know, we've taken a more vested interest as if it was, then it would have been just another user coming in there. Is that kind of clear?
Yeah, I guess, and maybe it's, I'm not asking the right way, but I guess I don't. Hearing what the residents are saying, totally, we've heard it for months and totally understand all the concerns, extremely valid. But I don't feel like it's in our purview to say people don't like it, so we can just say, we're saying no. I think it's that we have concerns around aesthetics. I have concerns around aesthetics for sure. Concerns around the traffic. We need to do our best to mitigate it. But then we recommend to city council to look at those. But then city council makes the determination if it all fits. Is that a fair assessment?
You would be, you on behalf of the council, you're kind of making that assessment in there. That's why the commission engaged that traffic analysis. That's why the commission
Around traffic, around aesthetics, around
Correct.
hours,
Mhm.
around those kind of things.
You're, you know, so ultimately, you're not asking the council to say, you know, you need to further look at the finished material of the building. You have that authority to give to council. The council looking for you to tell it what else in above and beyond should be required for this site.
For things like building aesthetics and signage and parking and those kind of
Circulation.
things,
Mhm.
not the use of that there.
That is correct.
Okay, I think that's important. I think for everyone to understand is the kind of what's in our scope and what's not, if that makes sense. But, and then, sorry, the liability question, whether it was intended or not, felt like a vague threat. And I guess I'm kind of curious what you know, in terms of.
And again, not with, you know, I know I'm not a lawyer or
Either one.
good to give legal advice, but the city has protection through the state in there. It's a very good question. One, I think, you know, it would behoove, you know, Paul Martin to make sure if this moves forward for him to address that at to the council. But it would be good to invite Mr. Martin to talk to the commission about that.
Okay, I mean, it could be discussed in front of the council before.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
I think we can make a recommendation to have legal counsel provide advice for that specific.
yeah, it just, I don't, whether it was intended or not, it felt implied, so I just.
I think it's a good question, and part of the process is that's why we're listening to the residents, because I mean, they help us think about these things. Same as the traffic, the circulation, again, and that's what the special permit process is for.
And I'm sorry for my last one, then the parking recommendations of the additional one, I understand, and then we'd mentioned 3 additional ones in here. When we say 3 additional ones, were you talking for customers or employees only?
I think that, you know, it was my recommendation to the commission that they should at a minimum secure 3 additional spots.
But not saying for who?
I'm not, no.
And as part of our special permit use, could we imply, or could we dictate that employees could not park on the site?
You could put that condition. I look at it from an enforcement perspective and how.
I understand,
how I
but
have
we could
to-
at least put the condition so it could be enforced if somehow the police decided to enforce that.
But it becomes
can't.
difficult.
They can't enforce that.
But we could revoke the special permit if it's violated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are the 3 additional spots in addition to the 3 that have been secured through from
No,
JBL?
that it would be because I'll take a step back. The site has enough parking to be compliant with code in there. Based on the analysis by the traffic engineer, they said the site would be 1 short for customers. Therefore, my request, again, I'm looking at that. I'm not necessarily, I do not believe that the site should be parked for its peak. You know, but it shouldn't be parked well, you know, to the average or below that. Securing 3 additional stalls in there for whatever user would want to use them would benefit, you know, this site.
Okay, but I believe the petitioner said he had 3 additional from JBL, assuming that's
And
true,
correct.
that would satisfy that condition.
That is
And-
correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that's been done on other businesses
Yes.
before. But, I've seen it done over at Monsanto using one of the, from the taller building. I can't remember the names, I apologize. But I have seen it done here in town. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, this is tough. Obviously it's tough. At the end of the day, the site is on our commercial corridor. And any retail use is going to be more intense than the office use that has been there for many, many years. And no matter what, a reuse of this building is going to require this kind of conversation about how to manage the increase in parking, how to take care of the neighborhood. And it's a tight fit. The neighborhood is very close to the edge there. It's very narrow. There's not much room, not a lot of latitude. And so, I mean, to me, regardless of who the specific future user is, okay, these issues would still be in front of this body. And to me, I keep coming back to that. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the commercial side. It's unfortunate for the residential side. There's nothing that we can do about that. That's the way it's built. That's the way it is. Okay? And all that we can do as a commission is try to help the petitioner and the neighborhood find ways that will help to mitigate as much of that as possible. We cannot totally change the situation. We can't change the traffic pattern along Olive Street Road as much as we all might want to. I mean, we are all very limited, all of us, the city, everybody is very limited in what our choices are in terms of dealing with this. But there is room in terms of design, and there are some proactive kinds of things that the neighborhood and the developer can probably do, but they need to sit down and talk about them and work it out. And unfortunately, they've been staring at each other and none of them are making a move. And I would suggest that we approve this in concept, but with a warning really to both the neighborhood and the petitioner that they need to get together and work these things out, and then get together with staff and try to get some realistic, concrete ideas that they can put in front of us for consideration. Now, I'm getting tired of talking about it and hearing about it. I want to see some real resolution of somebody. That would be my take on it.
Now, Carol, would we, with this concept and some of the recommendations from the consultant, do we want to stipulate some of those items now?
I think that'd probably be a good idea.
So, I think, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Carlos has a suggestion conditions on that list. And they're written out pretty good for what we were looking for.
I agree. I like the ones on here. I would probably add a few, like we've talked about in terms of that lawyer has to be included before final approval by city council and consulted. Employees couldn't park on the lot. I like the idea of having a commitment on signage in the neighborhood to not park on Dolores, to not go down to, like whatever appropriate signage can be worked out to deter that, because the resident concerns are extremely valid. And then I like Carol's idea of trying to get discussions with staff. And then I think we also are in agreement on adding, and Carlos has it here on the veneer or other objects, right? But I don't know if anyone captured any others, but
I think that's good.
I think the windows, but I think that would be taken care of when we came back for the site plan, but I'd like to see the metal on the windows and what that's really gonna look like.
I would also want the commitment to have somebody, if there's a peak, situation where we do have cars circling, that they have somebody outside to kind of address that, prevent people from, going down Dolores or, to try to mitigate that issue before it ever becomes an issue.
Did we decide that it was or would not be feasible to add a sidewalk on the Dolores side?
I think that's a long-term.
So that's
Comprehensive
okay, so
plan
that's not,
package.
there's no way that that could be included.
Well, I think the idea was maybe put it on the other side, right?
Oh, okay.
I don't know which side. which
Carlos,
one.
was there any discussion related to the sidewalk?
Not on which direction, I'm kind of looking at it. There are overhead wires on the eastern side, and I don't have information on the west, and I can access that on Google if need be. But we can look at, again, whether within that public right of way, engaging on a sidewalk. We have not had the discussion of if a sidewalk were to be provided to Dolores, which side would be best. Because it is pretty narrow and there are some grading issues that we'd have to probably address too. In there, I'd have to take a closer look. I don't have an answer.
Okay, yeah, so like, even if there was like a clearly marked pedestrian lane, there, it's so narrow right now, there wouldn't even be like enough room for that. But I mean, one thing that I've seen or I've heard is the comment that it's not safe to have employees walking from a different lot, but I mean, there's a sidewalk along Olive, like, to me, that seems super safe. There's a sidewalk. I mean, maybe is the crosswalk not like clearly marked?
But there could be
Maybe we
pedestrian
could-
traffic anytime.
There's already the
Yeah.
start of kind of a.
So we have
walkway,
curb cuts.
You know, on the 93, the east side of 9300.
But I think if parking is secured in the rear, the best bet is have a
Okay.
pedestrian crosswalk.
Yeah, like a clearly marked crosswalk that's curb cuts and everything. I don't know, it doesn't have to be like fully accessible, but
Now, it looks like there is some pathway. I'm not sure. I don't believe that that's a sidewalk installed
That's
by
like
the
a-
city.
yeah, it's pretty tight.
Yep.
Okay, any other items that we would want to add?
Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to ask the commission a question with regards to the question on liability. Okay, you know, we walk the sidewalks. Every sidewalk in our community has an entrance to a residential community. Are you asking our attorney to say, what's the liability? Because we have businesses on Olive and residential, and because someone's walking on a sidewalk, is the city liable because it's a business connected behind a residential area and you want to know the liability overall? Or are you wanting to focus on sheer liability of this business and this residential area because of the risk of a car going down a residential street?
I interpreted the question to be if the commission deviates from the recommendation of the experts that we hired, would we be liable for approving something that experts said we should not do?
Okay.
I agree. It
okay.
had nothing to do with the sidewalk. The sidewalk's there. Anyone
Yeah.
can walk down Olive any day.
Yeah,
It was
right.
that they were saying, if you change that entrance and didn't close Olive and someone got hit, that it was implied to me that you might be sued.
Okay, thanks
So-
for, okay.
Okay, any other further discussion on this?
There is a person with their hand up online, but I don't know that we closed the public comments or not.
We did close, well, we kind of went into discussions right now, so, I kind of, they hate to do it because then we open up the door for more, so I think at this point in time, we gotta move on, so. And, so is there any further discussion, or should we entertain a
I
motion?
was gonna make a motion.
That'd be fine.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to, I don't know if I'm gonna get this worded correct.
Hold on, give me 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Bear with me. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a conceptual site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan, and recommend to City Council the issuance of a special permit to authorize the operations of a marijuana dispensary facility as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated May 4, 2023, subject to staff conditions noted therein, with the conditions in particular those listed there and the addition of, well, you have to tell me here.
I had signage on Dolores prohibiting parking. Discussion with the neighbors regarding the traffic controls or some type of marker
Right.
in there. The view of the metal on the windows. And then the question, peak conductor is what I put.
Pedestrian crosswalk.
I called it a parking attendant during
Okay.
peak hours.
Mhm.
One other thing.
I want to make clear that that we expect to see improved conceptual renderings of the design for the building. And we also expect more detail with regards to compliance with our site, our ordinance for 428.
And legal counsel review.
And we also just want to check with our legal counsel with regards to liability concerns.
One other thing regarding the signage at the residence, I kind of want it to be more than just a no parking, type sign. I would like it to be more of a neighborhood entrance sign with the descriptions of no, no parking,
No business, no parking.
There's a good sign up at the one on Creve Coeur that literally is almost exactly like this situation. And that signage clearly identifies this is residential, no left turn, do not turn in here. Something of that specific nature. Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah. But I would like it to be kind of, like regular neighborhood entrance type of a situation. So. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Carlos, please call the vote.
Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Vice Chairman Wagner,
Approved.
and Chairman Jergo.
Approved.
The motion for recommendation passes unanimously. So the next step in the process would be to forward, if this is just solely a recommendation to the city council for consideration and review for first and second reading, and then the council in the second reading will also host a public hearing. That being said, anticipated dates for the council would be May 23rd for the first reading and June 13th for the public hearing and consideration of the bill.
Okay, good. I would know there's a lot of members in the audience that might, leave, at this time. We do ask you if there's going to be discussion out in the lobby area that you close the door, just so we can kind of continue our meeting because we have a full agenda still. So, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business, and this is item A, 529 Long Acres Drive.
Okay, Chairman, I have two new home petitions. I'm gonna kind of present together real quickly, and then the commission can consider them or ask questions separately. And there, one is for 529 Long Acres, and that's located midway along the new subdivision street, Birdie Lane, the Birdie Lane subdivision. It's just north of the detention area or basin that's on the south side. It'll be for construction of a new single-family home, of course. And it is the It is a legal lot of record compliant with the city's zoning regulations. Therefore, it's only subject to community design review. So this is solely an aesthetic review, along with the concept stormwater management plan review. But the city has exempted this subdivision, given that it provides full on-site detention for the subdivision as a whole in accordance with the MSD requirements. Therefore, reviewing it in terms of from our Olivet residential redesign and development guidelines, staff finds that it fully meets the massing, roofing, materials, exterior finish, articulation, and such. I appreciate the petitioner fully addressing the masonry component. That's one of the issues we've had with the others, and they kept on incrementing it. And in this case, they have here. So that is 529 Long Acres. In addition to that, the petitioner has submitted for at the end of the cul-de-sac at the far north, 570 Long Acres. Again, this is a legal lot of record approved, so it does not require site plan review, but it is subject to the concept stormwater management plan review and the community design review. And in review of the components of the community design guidelines, again, has masonry that almost reflects 50% of the building elevation, side entry garages, mass breaks, roof articulation, everything pretty well consistent with what the guidelines promote and object. Again, this development is approved in accordance with MSD standards and isn't subject to having on-site detention. However, they are proposing a pool and some additional flat work, and that would be subject to for them to provide some type of mitigation for the area associated with the flat work of the pool and the deck.
Does that have to come back to the commission?
No, it's under, it does not require that. It can be approved as a condition of in there, and there's different references in the suggested recommendation. If it's under 1,200 square feet, it could be any type of BMP. The code calls out what is required. So it could be a rain garden, rainscaping, or a dry detention bed. If it exceeds 1,200 square feet, which initial calculations indicate it does not, if it does exceed 1,200 square feet, then they have to provide a detention pit or of some sort on the side. Thank you. Okay.
Any questions or comments for Carlos? Any more, I should say? Carlos, I'm not sure if we need to hear from the petitioner unless everyone would like to. Carlos, I imagine we're going to have to vote on these individually. Is that correct?
Yes. And I do believe we have a couple of residents here
Oh, good.
that would like to speak in regards.
Thank you for the reminder. That's good. Appreciate it.
Yeah, but I do not see if the petitioner is on. If they can raise hands. I don't see Mr. Freeman on. In there.
Okay, since Mr. Freeman's not on, we have no more questions or comments. I think we'll take public comments on this. Thank you. And thank you for waiting. Sorry you guys had to wait so long.
It's fine. Hello, esteemed committee members. My name's Tom Knoll. I live at 575 Dealman, directly east of the subject property of the second property that was being discussed. I continue to have concerns over water drainage on my property due to grade changes from the development. Basically, they built a 12-foot hill. Currently, it's over 20 feet. Although I think that's due to construction. Per the staff letter discussed during the 12/17/20 meeting. Sorry,
no worries.
Need some water. I'm going to quote it here. Lot 8, subject lot, has a grading change towards the east. Retaining walls need to be considered to accommodate the changing grading. With the final grade being between 4 to 6 feet above the surveys discussed in these meetings over the subsequent 6 months. I was curious whether a new water study has been done. And just want to bring the attention, I know I've talked to Carlos many times. We've had a lot of flood damage on our property due to the development. I have questions over whether downspouts from the watershed of the roof goes directly into the basin or whether it's going to come out into the yard. I do appreciate the retaining wall going maybe 40% of the property adjacent to the house, but it doesn't connect all the way to the, and I'm looking at the site here, it doesn't connect all the way to the roadway. So I still have about a 12-foot elevation change that ends in my property. I've had to spend 15 grand on kind of a French drain for my basement. Didn't ask for any reimbursement, but I want to make sure that there's either been a new water study that shows to why they wouldn't do retaining walls for the entire property. And then my wife wants to know, because we have 2 kids, if there is a plan for a fence around the pool. And just make sure it's not just a retaining wall that kids will climb. That's all I have. A lot of flooding. I know we've had some, torrential rains. I'm not worried about the 1,000-year rains, but when we have to go down and check our basement every rain, and we've lost multiple flower beds to pooling of water coming off of their property on what used to be flat. Again, 12-foot hill built for the property. It was only ever discussed as a 6-foot gradients change in any of these meetings. I wasn't able to be here in 2020 due to the pandemic, but I've owned the house since 2014. We did not have these flooding issues before, although I probably could take better care of my colors. That's all I have. I think you're gonna hear similar.
Which house are we talking?
I think the one with the red dot, or no,
595, correct?
595?
I'm 575.
Here we go.
Yes, so that is my house. The stormwater, the sewage is on my property. So if you're looking at the proposed schematics, my property is the one that has the sewage drain that crosses the property line. So, which is that's where that hill is, that I'm happy that they're proposing some sort of retaining wall here, but I don't know why it doesn't go all the way over. So.
Gotcha. Thank you for your comments, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I think Carlos can probably answer some of those, but the
Sure.
downspouts go into their retaining system.
Okay, that's
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I was worried they would come out onto the front yard and
Yeah.
just.
And just for
proceed.
clarification, part of that elevation runs straight across within the permitted setbacks that anybody else would have, but then that retaining wall comes out towards the front of the yard.
Yeah,
Let's,
and that's where I'm
Yeah,
worried
good-
about.
good
it
point.
there.
Mhm.
it goes to the street, is what you're saying.
Well, no, it doesn't go to the street, it goes to the backyards and it filters into the detention area time.
Yeah, Carlos, how does this work with their neighborhood detention in this particular house?
This one was required to have, MSD had this preserved area on the north end.
Mhm.
And there, and the grades were just, they just fall that far. There's probably about an 80-foot drop, somewhere between the middle of the subdivision to the back, and then there's floodplain. I mean, this is an area where, there is a,
Unfortunately, the hills grade in our property is not towards the back where they're.
in there, so.
So Carlos, I
Yeah.
think our question is the water that's coming off the roof, is it, and it goes in the
It
gutter?
does not require, this one does not have a detention.
Correct, it all falls to the detention basin that's in the big or
No.
detention.
It goes to the north. It continues on to the extension of this creek back here by the bike trail. Everything back here under the new floodplain, the new flood maps show this area as a new designated 100-year floodplain in there. And then if you look at the LiDAR, you'll see there may be still a creek. I've never walked in there. in which the velocities have even shifted the location of the creek that goes more parallel through there. We'll be seeing a subdivision for this site, and you'll see the extensive grading that they're proposing to make that site accommodable in there. It's no different than on this side. But when that one came in, lot 7 and lot 8 do not have on-site detention systems. And the way MSD looked at them is that they put a 50-foot easement back here and restricted any, any kind of undisturbed area. And that is shown on the plat.
I guess where I'm wondering too, Carlos, is knowing where we're going and probably based off trends last 5, 10, 20 years, getting ahead of it to have detention, wouldn't that make, I understand they're saying maybe now it doesn't need it, but
It's something we can talk to the petitioner about. Again, they were exempt by that ordinance in there. So it wasn't anything that we brought forward to them.
Yeah.
To consider.
I hear you. I just feel like it mitigates things and avoids the future concern.
I just don't
Do it
like
now.
hearing the fact that they're experiencing all these problems
Now.
as a result of the
Yeah.
changes to the subdivision, you know?
Well, yeah, I'm just curious if the problems now are just because of the way that, right, it was rough graded, but after it's finished graded, I'm looking at this plan, there's swell to direct the runoff. And then, I mean,
But it all goes.
I
straight to
don't
the
see
back.
any other grade going to the back of the property. It all comes in the all 3 yards.
on the,
If you don't mind coming up to the mic, please. Sir.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I'm glad you.
Sorry, I'm Tricia Shea. I live at 585 Dealman Road. I started taking pictures when they started taking the trees down and behind so we're that White House just above the red oval.
I'll have to take a look in a second.
I have pictures that I can show you where it's level when they first started, and you can see as it goes on. Okay.
Was that, was that 585 Dealman?
Yeah,
Thank-
my Chief Shay, also at 585 dealing. Do you have that PowerPoint
Yes, bear with me 1 second.
or PDF? Anyway, so I think I'm just echoing what Tom just said in terms of, I mean, we had a massive flood. We've lived in all that for 18 years and lived at the property for 4 years at 585 dealing. Hadn't had any flooding since before. And then during the massive floods, we had a lot of flooding. We had 2 people come out related to drainage, and they both pointed to this massive hill. If I can show you, that popped up, at 8 on that property. And I really think the really interesting thing is that in 2021, when Mr. Trejo's looked at they recognized that this runoff was going to probably happen, and I don't know why that was not addressed. He said that the petitioner did not address it at the time, and so anyway, so we had a lot of flooding in our. You can go to the next slide. That's the pictures.
Can you speak closer to the
Oh,
microphone?
sure.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry. I felt like I was talking really loudly. Okay, so you can see the pictures that my wife took, and the left one is, they already started taking down the trees, and the right one, you can already see the hill that's coming up. I think that's a pretty significant water grade. And then after the flood, we started actually paying attention because I don't really do that. And you can see all this massive silt deposition. I actually contacted Mr. Trejo. He came out actually that morning and took a look at it. And I think at least my impression was he was of the opinion that we were definitely getting runoff off of that hill, which, like I said, they had predicted in 2021 and essentially did nothing about it. My belief is the engineering papered it over. And everybody that I've talked to related to this runoff has suggested that was a contributing factor. There's no way I can tell you that the massive flood didn't cause any flooding in our basement, but certainly is a contributing factor. So clearly we're having runoff. Basically the point is big elevation grade and they're clearly having runoff onto our property. You go to the next slide. We tried to contact the developer to see if they would do something about it, and they basically stymied us. Mr. Freeman said he visited site and didn't, and said, we're okay. He contacted the engineering. their engineer and they said this, which is that, the comments don't make any sense. And they sent us their files. And if you go to the next page, the file, so this is the file that they sent us. And essentially what they talk about is the total runoff on at number 10, which they said goes north, right? But I mean, that's an aggregate, that's an integration of the entire thing. They're not talking about water that's dumping directly on our property. And so, I mean, I think that's really a false analysis. And so actually I ended up talking to Mr. Vance, and he seemed a lot more receptive than the people at the developers. So anyway, so I think that's
who's Mr. Vance again?
Oh, he's the engineer.
Mhm.
So I was actually at one point trying to figure out if someone else could do the analysis, and it turned out that Vance Engineering was hired by Freeman, and like they switched engineers, which I don't know why. So the previous engineer that just said like, you guys don't make any sense. Like you look at the property and you're like, well, I don't know. It seems like the water should run down right into our property. So anyway, but those people were fired, removed, whatever, I don't know. Anyway, so that's basically our story. We ended up putting up a swale and a berm. We have like a berm in the middle of our backyard. And actually one of the things that I found out through this process is that it's actually extremely frustrating. It's hard to sue people because it requires a really big burden of proof. And it's just expert witnesses arguing with each other. So I definitely appreciate Mr. Treos trying to move this forward. My understanding now is that they're gonna put swale down there that should alleviate all of our water concerns. I mean, I'm certainly not a runoff engineer, but I believe at least something will be done to mitigate the impact on us. But anyway, if you can go to the next slide, I think. Oh yeah, this is the issue that was already flagged. I mean, it was, from 2 years ago. And then the last slide is just my summary. Is that my personal feeling is that this really should have been addressed 2 years ago prior to any development, before they did any rescaling, because I mean, runoff is really important, and and it can really mess you up. And if it overwhelmed our current drainage systems, then we're going to get a much bigger flood. And I think the other thing is that I don't know if there's any mechanism that can be put in place where we can come directly to the board. I guess maybe I could have asked Mr. Treos directly about it, but like I feel like these things could have been dealt with a lot earlier. I mean, the flood happened in summer of last year, and now we're getting around to discussing, doing this. And I've already done stuff to try, put in $20,000 to try to make sure that I'm bulletproof. So I feel like some of these issues really could be handled much earlier, because if they put the swale in, I wouldn't need to put in a berm. I mean, so that's that's the things I want to share, and hopefully potentially change the way that some of these things are dealt with, particularly in terms of runoff.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sir, did you have? Remember, state your name and address for the record.
My name's Ed Coslin. I live at 595 Dealman Road. It's the little yellow house on the hill that everybody doesn't see. So you all know where it is. I've lived there for 42 years.
I've never seen it.
Pardon?
I've never seen it.
So you just keep going north down. You've seen it because the path, the MSD path
The Greenway.
is the Greenway is our property line.
Gotcha.
Was there like a signpost?
Yes. Don't ask. Yes. There
What
a
is that?
signpost. We're the third owners of the house, and I don't know the answer. I've lived there 42 years. I don't know the answer to your question. The people that built it, it was built in 1948. It's one of the best 10 small houses in 1954.
Good bit of trip.
In Good Housekeeping magazine. And we have the magazine, and you can see it anytime. But we have the little yellow house, and it just goes north. It goes down to the MSD. And so there is 50 feet. It looks like 50 feet, but everything goes down right through our property. I just came to support our neighbors. I didn't think I'd be speaking.
Are you experiencing any flooding
Yes.
on your property?
Yes. Yeah, it is all downhill.
Yeah.
And I agree with our neighbors that how this has been dealt with seems kind of backwards. So, but the properties are there, the Birdie Lane is Birdie Lane, I got all that. There is 50 feet, which was agreed, right? At 50 feet, we've got it, but it's all downhill, and there's just scrub and trees and.
Yeah.
To hold the soil, other than that, there's no.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, Carlos, I'm very uneasy about approving additional redevelopment when we've got some potential very serious flooding issues out there that should be dealt with. And I'd really like it if we had something, from the developer that said, I recognize this and we're going to fix this, or no, we're just not. And so at least we all knew where we stood. Can we ask you to go and talk to the developer and see if we can figure out what's going on and why
Yeah, there's
these
no,
residents are getting flames? They're not supposed to be getting that kind of.
there's a
Wow.
couple of things in there because the site isn't improved and finished. So I understand the concerns from the resident, but there was construction going on at the same time. And that July, August rain was unique, and this was not the only place where we had flooding. And I hadn't experienced it before, whether there was improvements going on behind them or not. So I want to make that clear. That was a big rainfall in a short period of time that impacted several properties throughout the community. In there. To heighten it, the site isn't finished. It's unimproved. It's dirt, clay, and all that. And the only thing that was in place is siltation fencing, which in no way is designed to hold back water. It's just supposed to take the sediment out of it in there. And
We still can't leave a site.
pardon?
We still can't leave a site that causes problems to the. other
Correct,
neighbors.
if but again, that event happens so quickly, so fast.
I get that.
In there. Now, going back to, we have an approved grading plan that got vetted by this commission, consultant, by MSD and all that they're designing towards too. In there, but that doesn't necessarily make it perfect, especially in a situation where whether this is the last house or second to the last house, that we've been made aware. And there's no condition that the commission has to act on it tonight. And we can request the petitioner to come in with his engineer to have some type of solution to try to address these problems. Now, that solution by code does not have to be a detention pit in there, but it could be in there, or it could be other means to mitigate or retaining walls to try to readdress that in there. We can take a closer look. We can ask the surveyor to give us more, to really focus along that western boundary of the adjacent property owners and their eastern, so we can get more of an idea of the grades that are going on there. The one thing I asked the commission is a concern. What I've heard so far has been regarding this lot 8 or 570 long acres. You have 2 petitions that are coming in from the petitioner. If you want to hold both of them or at least act on one and request them to come in to address the commission on the other.
Go ahead. Is spot 29?
Yes.
That's the first one. Is that affecting any of the neighbors?
I guess I'm also probably maybe, but the fact that they're not responding, not having a conversation and not here to talk about it, I don't see any reason not to wait, on both personally. Like, they can show up, have the discussion.
I agree with them, absolutely. They both should wait.
Okay, so we'll defer both.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't yell at you.
Yeah, and get close to the mic. Hit talk.
Hit the gray button.
Yeah.
Mine went off too.
It's too late. Okay.
Speak.
No, so the question is, like, when these elevation grades happen, like, shouldn't these runoff mitigation things exist beforehand? Like, I've heard this from multiple people though, like, these sites are partially developed, but we're not protected from any of that. And like, I think that's what's really bothering me is that maybe sometime down the road, we're gonna be protected, but with the swale or whatever, won't use just retaining wall, but like during this process, it's been quite some time now, so like it's the next big rain, I mean, we might have gotten flooded again, so that's.
The mic should be working.
So anyway, that's my direct question.
We appreciate the comment because I think a lot of members probably will agree with you on that. So we'll look into it, and see. Yes.
So I went and spoke to the owner of 515 Dealman. It's right where they had built a retaining wall, so it's at 515 and 535. So in the final plans, the owner said that there was supposed to be a retaining wall, but just like my husband was pointing out, in between of when they started to actually building the retaining wall, they had flooding, they had flood damage, both properties. So I think that was kind of what.
Yeah.
Was trying to say, like, what are we supposed to do in the meantime? The final plans might have a retaining wall or a swale or what are.
It's my understanding a contractor's responsible for
Well, what would happen is you would contact your insurance company and the insurance company would fight with the contractors. That's what your homeowners is for, actually. So that's how that legally that would work in that scenario.
The owner at 515 is actually a lawyer, and he said that Freeman came and built the wall eventually, but it was too late.
recommend that they speak to their insurance company.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand why it needs to be done through insurance. This is predicted, all the stuff is predicted.
Yeah, back in 2021.
No, it's not.
Well, I can't give you any answers of why it didn't happen this time. Okay. I mean, I understand.
It seems, the bottom line, it doesn't seem like it's codified so that these protections exist for residents, existing residents prior to.
Well, we understand, but this is also some discussions for later, okay? I'll have some personal discussions with you guys and we can kind of go through that and see what, if there's or any issues. But try to go back and forth right now to solve this, we're not going to be able to do that. The point's well made. No, it's very good. point.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, very good point. But it's getting late and we still have a lot of items. Okay, so. Yeah. All right. Thank you and sorry for your inconvenience. All right. Okay, since those are going to be deferred, we'll move on to item 6C 9338 Olive Boulevard.
Chairman, this is a real quick one. The code requires me to come before the commission and the placement for a monument sign. This is a new monument sign that will be going up at 9338 Olive Boulevard. You have some visuals in your staff report of the streetscape. It'll be a nice addition. Part of that will require that they do some streetscape improvements, and that is putting that landscape retaining wall similar that you might see at the funeral home just down the block here, or what has been done at McDonald's. Is that it ties or helps, it doesn't fully bring the streetscape up to chapter 428, but it gets us closer in there. So they are putting a modular brick wall along with the monument sign, and there's the code pretty much tells them what they have to do, and they're doing it. But I still have to bring it to your attention.
Good. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Carlos? Any public comments? Anybody online? Carlos, can you see if there's anybody online that has a public comment?
There are two people online, and I don't recognize them in conjunction with this permit, but if you'd like to speak, if you can show your hand.
In the meantime, someone be ready for a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Wait, just kidding. I appreciate it.
Okay, Chairman.
Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion I'd like to move the motion to approve the petition for site plan and community design review for a new monument sign at 9338 Olive Boulevard, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated May 4, 2023, subject to staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's made to hear second.
Second.
And seconded. Carlos, please call the vote.
Commissioner Waller,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass, approved. Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Vice Chairman Wagner,
Approved.
Chairman Drugel.
Approved.
Thank you. Motion
Okay,
passes unanimously.
that being said, we'll move on to other business. 7A, discussion regarding chapter 445 urban agriculture, specifically section 445080 bamboo. Carlos.
Real quickly, we're just going to bring this to the commission's attention. This is not for action. The council has asked, is going to forward a request to the plan commission to remove the enforcement aspects regarding bamboo under section 445.080. The city will still prohibit the planting of bamboo on residential properties, or pretty much in general, in there. But pre-existing bamboo and the enforcement procedures would be repealed from that ordinance. And reason is, and again, it's become an enforcement issue to try to mitigate complaints and concerns on it. And you know, I think the ordinance had its best intent, but it did not work. So therefore, the council has made a decision to remove the enforcement aspect regarding pre-existing bamboo.
So what is the course of action for a neighbor that has issues?
It would become a civil matter that they'd have to address within the courts.
Carlos, what's the enforcement issue? We spent a lot of time on this ordinance. I'm just trying to figure out what is it about it that makes it just so difficult?
It was difficult to enforce and to mitigate how these issues in there. You know, we got involved in something that was bigger than just bamboo. And were used as a mechanism between two property owners to make to address, you know, issues beyond just the placement of bamboo. It was unfortunate, but it didn't work. We had a lot of staff resources placed into this and all that, and it all came down to one individual property. And frankly,
right?
Well, two property owners.
Yeah.
The enforcement was just one, you know, in there. This was well beyond our expertise to try to mitigate.
And
So
because
we spent over a year working on this ordinance for no particular reason. I mean, that's rather frustrating.
I kind of take offense to that because it's not just this ordinance.
yeah,
There's a lot more to that. I don't, yeah, I understand what
Well,
you're saying.
There is,
Mom.
but I mean, my understanding is that this is what initiated.
This
whole
is
action.
specific to that, and this is the only component in the ordinance that had some enforcement aspect specifically outlined in there. And so I understand what you're saying, and yes, a lot of resources were put in urban agriculture.
And there's
my
not a good
opinion-
solution to correct it once it's been.
We found out it's something well beyond our expertise on staff. And there's two aspects. I mean, take a again. My understanding from the council is there were full support that bamboo should not be planted. And this maintains that. And that was the intent of this ordinance. The aspect of what do you do with those that are pre-existing before this ordinance ever came into place? And the standards that were put in place, put our staff in a very difficult situation to try to mitigate.
Just curious, is there some sort of registration process for having bamboo? How do we know what's pre-existing bamboo and what isn't?
Pretty much we went through and kind of inventoried and through Google, there's a lot of things you can do. But we did inventory all the properties. And unfortunately, there was one specific area that did a poor effort to try to maintain it or minimize its impact to the adjacent properties in there. And again, we learned a lot in the process in there. So what about, well, what if my neighbor, I wake up tomorrow, my neighbor has it. Again, we had those issues come into place in there, and through the subparagraph A, we were able to tell them, neighbors were showing, proof that there wasn't anything planted, and the person that had planted them could show, and then took them out. Okay, there. That was a lot easier to try to. It was more black and white when you had
Relying
the
on
pre-existing, and in there it got a.
Well, what's the difference? I mean, I think there's a big difference for, like you said, they took them out. Is it because once bamboo is established, it becomes much harder to deal with because of?
It's our understanding, correct. Not being a bamboo expert, but yes, the plantings that we had in a situation, this was on crosswinds. And they were small enough that, they were removed without any implications that it started spreading. Pre-existing bamboo, not knowing enough of the history, how far it spreads. And what it does is it has these veins or risers that extend outward in the plant, and they just continue and continue and continue.
Crossing property lines,
Although they won't recognize, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you cut them, they still continue, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And again, going back to what Carol said, because I think it's a good point. I respect that question. And I think that it is my understanding from the city council is like, yeah, we don't want residents planting bamboo. I mean, especially given the scenario that we've gone through in trying to mitigate pre-existing bamboo in there. The council, though, was cognizant, the pre-existing bamboo, in there, and tried to come up with a mechanism on how to address it. Amicably in there. And we only had one situation where we had to, and it just didn't work.
It does put the resident who's, is impacted in a much harder situation. But
But I think that through our process, the resident probably could get a quicker return through civil court than it could through us, because it put us in there were a lot of moving parts in that process on verifying what was correct and what is good practice and such.
did you look into having somebody come back out and review what was done to see if they at least met the?
The city did not, and I did not make that request, but I did meet with one of the owners in there, the one that was being encroached with the bamboo, who had hired a landscape company to come do an assessment of what they had there. I did meet with them to kind of go through it, and the explanation, at least what I interpreted, was one, just the conditions of the lot and the mitigations that were done were not sufficient in there, because there was a big change in grade elevations in there, and
Did the contractor at least meet the requirements of what he was asked, or what he was
from the city's,
contracted to do?
from what the city had dictated the contractor to do is yes.
Did the consultant or the person that came out agree with that?
Yeah, well, I don't want to put words in their mouth. I'm gonna say yes, but didn't necessarily agree that that was the best way to get that mitigated. That makes sense? I mean, because I
Yeah.
don't think that they were saying what the contractor did was bad. It was that's probably not the approach they would have taken.
Understood. And it's also debated
what type of approach. There's more than one way to address this. Is that right?
Correct. And our approach was, again, we did go out through a bid process. And we do look at the bids, in terms of their costs and go with the lowest bidder to make sure they're consistent in there. And then we did follow up in the review of that.
Okay, well, since we're not putting any action, I think everyone just needs to think about it, see if they're comfortable with it or not. And maybe we can have further discussion during the next meeting on this. One thing, well, I guess we're gonna need to see if there's any public comments related to this. Seeing none in the audience. Go ahead,
I
Kurt.
don't want to belabor, but I mean, it would have taken us 10 minutes to say, put in an ordinance form that you can't plant bamboo in all of that.
Understood,
I mean,
understood. We
that's,
can't go back, there's.
I know, but I still have to make the point.
It's a tough situation and we've all been in situations where we wish we could go back, but right now we just kind of look and kind of move forward and move on. But point well taken. And I think it's gonna be worthwhile for us to be thinking about the future.
And I'd
What we're
like for council to hear that. Because,
Yeah.
yes, I understand.
Our liaison will definitely voice that opinion.
Your liaison has already heard it.
Yes, but voice it to the rest of the council. Carlos, are there any public, anybody online?
There is one person, but I don't see any request.
Okay, we'll give him 15. Okay, good. We'll move on. And item B, discussion regarding rainscaping. Carlos, can we move this?
Actually, it's very quick. I'm just asking, as part of one of our goals through when we were working on the stormwater master plan, was an education component. I was approached by a representative of Sustainability Olivet, that they had, were able to talk with someone at the Missouri Botanical Garden that was willing to speak to our residents regarding rainscaping, and have asked if we would kind of co-promote the speaker. And I think, it would be consistent with our goals here and address an issue that we continuously hear, as we just did today, about how to mitigate stormwater.
Who are you asking to present?
It's someone with the Missouri Botanical Garden.
Okay, not a local.
No.
All right,
No.
okay.
I think that'd be great. And
Okay.
I think that'd be good. I would love to get handouts and things like that we could also pass
Absolutely.
out to not only ourselves, but to neighborhood associations as well.
We'll do so.
Good. Okay, meeting minutes. I see that we have meeting minutes.
That is correct.
Somewhere in my stack.
It should have been in that side pile.
There it is, April 20th, 2023. Do I hear a motion or acknowledgement that we have received this?
I'll acknowledge.
As acknowledged, if there's any corrections or errors, make sure we let Carlos know. All right, we'll move on to reports. Brief reports.
Real quickly, activity continues on the easy storage starting from the east side. UPS store has relocated to the Plant Havens Center. Plant Haven has submitted plans for the greenhouse, because they will have an indoor greenhouse, but they won't start construction on that till after the annual sale. So they're going to wait a little while longer. As you continue down the corridor, I guess going all the way to Olive Crossing, there is a strike that is going on. Hopefully that's coming to an end. So not only was, were private developments impacted, like Olive Crossing, but also our site for the community center. There were some people that are on strike. And again, the city goes in a full effort to make sure that they meet all, all those needs and union wages. But this is part of a general strike. It's not specific to our sites. It's something bigger. The hope is that they're getting to some resolution in there. So at least at this point, it's not enough to say that it's going to impact the apartments opening by this August. Hope all things go well. The road work continues. It's utilities. Utilities are are the biggest obstacle and getting to who is responsible for the individual pole and who should remove what and on there, and that's where they're at in there. So we're hoping that by the end of May, the road work would be finished, but it may take a couple of weeks longer. In there. Outside of that, I'll bring it to the city liaison to both to kind of note about the elections, and then the council organization, and then the city manager
search.
Okay, I'll be as brief as I can too. Yes, we had the changing of the guard. I am now the pro tem. Maxine will remain the mayor for consistency with regards to the change that we're having internally. We are on the search for city managers. We're going through the interview process. And we're continuing to do our due diligence to come up with a final determination decision. At this point in time, our finance director, Mr. Darren Mann, continues to work as the interim city manager. So he knows what it's like for me to get texts saying, this is wrong, take this out. Why does Carlos have an S? He's never had an S. He'll never get his information. So, it's good. It's a good transition. We've got, very professional staff. And that process will continue forward. We have Party in the Park Saturday, guys. We are going to, unveil the tile mosaic that you all did, and Miss Roth, was so great to again put it on our leaning and our sitting walls at Stacy Park. So 5 o'clock. Is when everything begins. And I think at 5:30, we're going to do the, Whippy here is the artwork and celebrate that. God says Saturday's not going to rain. It's going to be a beautiful day, a beautiful evening. I hope to see you there. Stacy Park all our parks have had great upgrades, and it should be fun. So please join us. Again, you all know I want you involved. My commitment on the comprehensive plan is I'm willing to go sit with a chair and table and paper in apartment complexes and attempt to get, what we can get in those that are not, embracing and providing input. We got to go to them, and that's a part of what I want to do. You guys do the hard work. I want to do the hard work. I want to know, you want to know what our citizens want for the next 20 years. Have a great one. It's 10 o'clock.
Not yet.
Blessed.
Okay, Dawn, anything?
The very last thing, the workshop on May 18th. We hope to see you all there and send people. There will be yard signs. I'll be sending out an email tomorrow requesting who's going to volunteer for, to put up signage, to hand out flyers, to do, very similar to what Missy's explaining. So thank you, guys.
Good. All right. Great, tough meeting, guys. Appreciate all the discussion and everything that we had. So we'll adjourn now at 9:52. Thanks.
So,